Welcome to today's Seidokan Saturday. So, the question to today, we're getting into the last few techniques for 6th Kyu, green belt, but as a precursor to that, my question for you and extra viewers, by the way, thank you, we're up over 135 subscribers and 2,000 views on the last few videos. Amazing. I invite those of you who are newly aboard to go back and specifically watch the first 40 of the videos where I discuss bunkai philosophy. Where do we get the applications? What's the template or the view, the window through which we view how to decide on what a bunkai is, unless you have direct lineage from the master who founded the kata that tells you, yes, this is what this move means. Other than that, we're left to extrapolation. I discuss Okinawan common principles such as economy of motion, hip power, kime versus muchimi, stance mobility, a lot of those things in the early 40 of the concepts and principles and foundational ideas of Okinawan karate. So go back and watch. I also invite you to come to my Facebook page by the same name. It's the same exact name as the YouTube channel, or Okinawan Seidokan. If you'll go to the Facebook page, these are linked there, but then as I repost the old videos, you'll get a notification about those just in case you don't search them on your own. So please come to the Facebook as well. All right, that said, we have a few techniques to do in the kata, and that's all that's left for our 6th Kyu. I've done all the other techniques up to this point. But the question came to my mind, when you're working on kata, when you're approaching kata, there are different terminology that different teachers, studios, dojos, systems, styles will use. I've heard everything from I'm going to run the kata, to I'm going to perform the kata, I'm going to do the kata, I'm going to walk through the kata. I've heard people say, hey, do you want to just do it all the way, or do you want to itch through it? As if itch, what they meant was ichi, ni, san, and count their way through it. But they were saying itch, 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 one, 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 one. There's all sorts of ways to approach the practice of kata. So do you do it? Do you run it? Do you perform it? Do you demonstrate it? What in your mind are you thinking? And here's why that matters. I've been watching the Okinawan World Tournament and comparing how those kata are performed specifically, as opposed to how the masters who demonstrated during the Okinawan's World Tournament, or our own Master Toma, is on record with kata. And even when Master Toma demonstrated kata, and it's pretty much consistent with all the Okinawan masters, that they demonstrate the kata very differently than kata performance in a tournament. But beyond that, in the dojo, when it's time to line up and do kata, or when you're working on your own afterwards, in your mind, what are you thinking what word are you thinking? Are you doing, running, walking through, performing, demonstrating, or the word I prefer, practicing? Now, to practice kata is a broad range. A lot of people think that to practice something means to do it over and over and over. That's to repeat. Practice involves a conscious thought about making something better. And I want you to consider Master Toma did Seisan kata for 3 years before learning another kata. In the old days, it was very standard for the masters, the students, karate students of the day, to do just a single kata for an extravagant period of time before moving to another one. Do you think during those 3 years that it was just do the kata again, do it again, do it again? Or was there something else going on? Another clue to this is as you look at the founders of karate and their students who've then gone on and created different styles, and sometimes even the movements of the kata are different even though they learned from the same teacher. And that gives us a clue of what the practicing kata really means. So let me give you an example. Our kata is one, so I'm not going to do the whole kata here, but just for the sake of example, if I'm competing the kata, following my salutation, and it's wansu real loud, and there's a whole demonstration, performance way of doing that. But let's assume that I've already gone through the salutation. If I am performing, then moves are going to be fast, exaggerated, and unified, something along the lines of this kind of a movement. But if you watch the masters demonstrate rather than perform, what you will typically more likely see is something along these lines. Not as fast, foot sets, then the body moves. Especially as I watch Master Toma doing kata, and I'll use, just as an example, knife hand block. When he's doing kusanku or some of the other kata, what you'll typically see is he will step and then drop. Step and then drop and whip. That style of movement tends to be very consistent with how most of the masters perform it, or demonstrate it, not perform it. Now, I've heard Sensei Nix say accurately, when I do a kata, I add these things for performance, because performance, by its nature, should be dramatic. And that's right and correct for the circumstance. For the tournament, that would be right and correct. But for the kata itself, that's not how we're going to do it, demonstrate it. It will be more foot than upper body. Just as an example. Is that the only way? Well, no. I had my students the other night do Seisan, for instance, and this was the method. We start, again, yoi, bow, hello, salutation, but then repeat the move. That is practice. And there are several ways to break down practice. But the idea of practice is, I'm in place, now I want the body mechanics of power. I'm here, I'm going to drive, rotate, try that and do it a little better. Keep my elbow in. That's cleaner. Now I'm going to drive and drop a little more. That's a little better, but I let my head go. So I'm going to stop and think of how I can make each individual movement more powerful, more on target, maybe change the target. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to change the kata, but again, if you go back to, say, Chotoku Kian and the lineage of Shorin-ryu karate, to Nakazato, to Shimabukuro, to Joen Nakazato, different lineages, and watch Tadashi Yamashita under Nakazato do it versus Zenryo Shimabukuro do it from his father's lineage. There are differences. Then you go to the Matsubayashi lineage with Nagamine, and there's a whole lot more hip before each movement. Would they fight that way? No, but they practice that way to learn the body dynamics that will enable maximum transfer of power, maximum stability of the lower body, proper angle and position. So I'm not just doing the kata. I'm not just running through the kata. I'm not performing the kata. I am practicing the kata. Things such as cadence. In Shotokan, for example, in the Kihon katas and in their Heian Shoran, which is our Pinyan Nidan, it's very standard to block, punch, punch, punch. Same rhythm all the time. Block, punch, punch, punch. That's always their rhythm. Why? Is that going to be what my opponent always does? No. So it's valuable to practice with different rhythms, faster, slower. We can go super fast. Hanshi Nick Adler of Ishinryu did a demonstration on one of Shion Marilyn Fierro's broadcasts that she used to video. I'm trying to remember what the name of them was. But he was talking about fighting kata. For example, Seisan. It's ugly, it's not grounded, but if I'm really fighting, that's more how I'm going to go after and hit the guy. We could even take all of our kata, wansu, make it more of a fight. Put that footwork into it. Still hit all the stances, but the in-betweens and the move make it more kumite-esque. That is practicing kata. So please leave questions, comments, your approach. Do you always do kata the same way? Do you do it, run it, walk through it, perform it, demonstrate it, practice it? And in those terms, do you differentiate what you're getting out of each session with your kata? That's all for today. Thanks again for joining. Like, share, subscribe, keep it going. I love the growth that we're experiencing. Interact, ask questions, go to the Facebook so you can get links to the others if you're not going back and retro watching those. And as always, until next week, keep practicing.